So Stefano Armenia is a senior research fellow in the analysis of dynamical systems at the research department of Linked Campus University in Rome. He holds a degree in computer engineering, industrial automation and control systems, a PhD in business engineering, and a master's in management and business administration. He's a minister of the System Dynamics International Society, a member of the System Dynamics International Society since 2002, president of the System Dynamics Italian chapter since 2011, and a member of the SDS Policy Council since 2014, where he sits as a VP chapters and SIGs, the special interest groups. From 2014 to 2017, he has also been the IT Communications Officer of the European Academy of Management. Professor Armenia has done a lot, and I'm just going to do the last part of it. He's also an author of several papers in top-ranked journals, and he has been involved in various initiatives dealing with sustainable development and climate change. He has led the climate action exercise in several previous occasions, both at public and private level. He has participated several times at various editions of the Festival della Sostenibilità. I probably did say that correctly, and has been involved in different research dealing with sustainable development and other environmental issues, as well as, and this is one of my favorite parts, as well as the translation of some of the bestsellers like Thinking in Systems. That's one of my favorite books. So I'm so glad you translate that to greater and bigger audiences. Thank you so much for being here, Professor. I'm going to hand over to you to take us through the evolution of decision making.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the very long introduction, but when I was told to provide a bio, probably I sent the longest one I had, whereas probably 2 or 3 lines would have sufficed. So again, many apologies. But thanks for inviting me to this conference. I'm so glad to be here, and okay, I'm handing over my office at the end of this year, but as VP chapters and SIGs, I really welcome that chapters and SIGs can keep on going in organizing such events, because we really need to spread out the word of systems thinking and system dynamics all over the world, at the topic level, but as the South Africa chapter is doing also at the local level. So I really welcome this kind of initiatives, and for sure also the System Dynamics Society does. And as you are aware, I mean, for all those other chapters listening today, there is also a fund that supports chapters and SIGs in setting up their own events and organize meetings like this one. Okay, so this was just a quick spot for the society, which I really feel, I was not told to say it, but actually I really feel it because of the commitment I have towards supporting chapters and SIGs, and seeing that an important chapter like the South African chapter is making progress also in organizing big events like this one. It's really a matter of pride for me. And for the whole society. So let me share my presentation. Just a second, because I need to do it from. Okay, I have to put it into presentation mode, and then I have to share the right window, which is now here. Okay, now you should see my screen, right?
It's almost here. I'll let you know when it's up. I can see something's happening.
I don't know why it says invalid URL on my screen, but let me check again.
Can you maybe try and reshare it again?
Yeah, I'll try to reshare it again. Just give me a second. All right, let's go. I'll try to reshare it. Yeah, this is presentation mode. Okay, this is working on my computer. Now let's try to reshare it here. And no, it's doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't seem to.
Okay, we can see it now. It's visible.
You can see it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. If I move forward, can you see the slides?
Yeah, we can see the slides. We can hear you. I think you can go through. Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm going to give you this presentation today by, let's say, bringing some food for thoughts according to a direction that decision making has taken since a few years now. But I believe that there is a real need for a convergence between decision making held on the basis of data analysis and model-based analysis, and in this I see a very important perspective for systems thinking and system dynamics. So we'll try to provide some, as I said, food for thoughts and for further conversations and scientific debate on how systems thinking and system dynamics can play a crucial role in decision making and in getting out the most out of the possibilities offered by data analytics technologies. So the point is around taking decisions, which is for sure a multifaceted and interdisciplinary approach to governance. And in this sense, by looking at the decision theory, we have several, let's say, approaches now to decision making. And so we have the prescriptive decision making, descriptive decision making, predictive, diagnostic, behavioral, complex, uncertain, heuristic, probabilistic, interactive, fuzzy logic, quantum cognition, infogap, and also the ludic fallacy, which somehow is connected to black swans, unknown unknowns, etc. So there is a lot going on. It's a multifaceted environment, pretty much interdisciplinary, where we really need to really have to understand where we can basically find what we really need in order to take our decisions. The general approach in much of these theories revolves around either deciding according to analytical tools or to simulation tools. In particular, we see that there are some structural tools like discrete event, agent-based, and system dynamics that are for sure important ones. Well, of course, once you decide the tool, you let's say obtain a result after some calculus, and then eventually you move back to the tool itself to modify something. And not always you move back to the data, like, okay, am I getting something wrong from the data? So of course this is happening, but there is not a structured approach in doing this. Anyway, before moving to the proposal that, anyway, as I said, is just some proposal that opens up for debate around this topic, I would like to move to understanding what is really governance, which is basically what we do when we take decisions. So governance is the manner in which power is exercised in the management of a country's economic and social resources for development. And this was a definition of the World Bank back in '92. The system by which organizations are directed and controlled, from Cadbury, still 1992. So somehow it's a way or in a system or a manner in which decisions are taken in order to solve some problems. And what is good governance? Good governance is epitomized by predictable, open, and enlightened policymaking. let's say, transparent process. A bureaucracy imbued with a professional ethos, an executive arm of government accountable for its actions, and a strong civil society participating in public affairs and all behaving under the rule of law. And this is a definition given by the World Bank in 1994. But then how to reach good governance, how to achieve and implement good governance. Basically, when you take the right decisions in order to solve problems that are affecting your organizations, then which problems? And this is one of the fundamental challenge of analytics, understanding what actually must be solved. Most of the times we are asked to provide the right answers, but I would say that the first thing to do is to pose ourselves with the right questions. And indeed, there are some poorly posed problems that are, impacting the way in which we take decisions. So, for example, in data science, you could often encounter what we call poorly posed problems, like someone else in the business encounters a problem. They use their past experience and analytics knowledge to try to frame the problem. They hand their concept of the problem to the analyst as if it was set in stone and well posed, and the analytics person accepts and solves the problem as is. And well, of course, this can work because they get a solution which is sometimes enough potentially to make the symptoms disappear, but what about the structure of the root causes that we very well know about? So sweeping the dust under the carpet is not actually what we want. And sometimes take a step back and try to understand a little bit better what's underneath. When it comes to the role of organizational data, which is what we rely upon when we are asked to perform some analytics on the data coming out from our organization. This is, of course, as I said, the data that the organization produces during its life. And it's also so important for, for taking decisions and for the viability of the ultimate goals of the organizations. But of course, we know that not all of the available data have the same importance. So the data has to be relevant to the goals of our organization. And we have to be prepared in answering the questions, why does this type of data matter? And what are we going to do with this information? So this has, well, I would say in the last 10, 15 years, led us to try to, let's say, aggregate as much data as possible in order to try to find out what's going on in our organization out of that data. And this has been due also to the higher and quicker availability of data and data management technologies, even made more available by the fact that technology for doing this is getting cheaper, and the processing capability is helping us to manage large amounts of data. But big data are affected by intrinsic problems. It could be affected by the bias that we can have in data. It might be difficult to understand. It does not generally trace causations, rather only patterns. And most of the times, well, I would say almost always, does not trace soft variables, which are also very important when we come to the social part of our organizations. Some authors argue that big data contribution to prediction performance is still marginal. That was, well, okay, now almost 10 years ago, as it is considered highly contextual dependent, and that all the fuzz and claims to its objective and accuracy are somehow misleading. things have slightly improved over the last 10 years, but in the end, not really so much if you think about, so technology has become cheaper and quicker, but as a matter of fact, still relying on stochastical approaches. Of course, with data analytics, the organization has the possibility to extract knowledge from big amount of data, both structured and unstructured data, in order to understand how a system has behaved until a certain point in time. So we can map over time and a certain variable to understand, how it has behaved and reconstruct the pattern of behavior of that variable for sure. But they don't have yet the capability to infer the overall system behavior. So what it is underneath, and potentially also the relationship with other systems interacting with our system of inquiry. At the moment, data analytics is revolving around, four main approaches, which is descriptive, so trying to understand what happened. It is also diagnostic, why it happened. It is predictive also, so it's trying to answer the question, what will happen? And could be prescriptive, so what should I do if certain things happen? And you see that something is leading to decision, like prescriptive when it comes to decision support, or even to action when there is some automation for taking decisions. The human input is still relevant also for descriptive, diagnostic, and predictive in order to take decision and then go to the action side. This is coming from a maturity level from Gartner in 2016. So pretty still valid, I would say, as during the last 3-4 years, I personally didn't see any update to this model. These are just a few slides on what is descriptive analytics. So I'm not going to go through this also because I think that my time is limited and there are a few things that I would like to tell you and also open the floor to some debate on this. For sure, this slide is interesting because somehow through data, for sure, we can try to infer some relationships between variables, and of course, this is one of the sources also of our everyday job when we have to produce and build models. So we need evidence of the existence, even if sometimes stochastical through statistics, of some relationships. I've also been telling you about the predictive analytics, even if sometimes this type of tools are somehow kind of black boxes, and it's really sometimes difficult to evaluate their performance in terms of how reliable is their way of working. It is also interesting to say about predictive and prescriptive analytics that are, of course, intensively working on data. Again, what if this data is wrong or biased? So this is one of the key, questions that we are always trying to answer when we need to take decisions based on data. Also, still, data analysis is well, there are for sure indeed new techniques and technologies that, especially with machine learning, are making this this process more and more, let's say, viable and that trustable in a sense. But still, most of these techniques are based on stochastical approaches and basically on correlation, which we definitely know is different from causation. So if we take the iceberg that we very well know about, that puts events at the top, then patterns of behavior immediately underneath, systems understanding at the third level, and mental models at the bottom or at the top, depending how you want to see it. We could say that for sure statistical approaches that could include some bias in data work for sure at the level of symptoms analysis. So they are able to understand if there are some correlation between events and even between patterns of behavior. But they are not able to deal with the causation aspect that evidently it's dealing with, we could say, the structure of the system, and then potentially with archetypes or anyway structural approaches. So talking about big data and data analytics disadvantages, yeah, well, this was something that I already had basically reported. So predicting behavior from analytics, if we consider the past events, we might be led to consider that a certain behavior could move forward in the future according to these three dotted lines. So we might be led to take one of these routes, whereas the system might just behave like this from a certain point onwards. Now, let's consider that there are also other techniques that recently have been developed that are pretty much interesting and come to our help to a certain extent. So this is process mining that help us understand.
Mentioned about 5 minutes left for this part, and then we're going to start some discussion.
Sure. I was saying that process mining is for sure helpful because it helps us to recognize the processes that are happening between information systems in an organization. So let me go then quick to the process mining part, which is probably the most interesting part now from now on. This supports the analysis of business processes based on the logs from the information systems inside an organization. So basically you are able, starting from the logs, to reconstruct the effective processes that are happening at least at the digital level. But of course, the problem happens when not all of those processes are held digitally. So for sure, there is something that escapes the possibility of effectively reconstructing the processes inside the organization. So if anyway, the interesting thing here is that if we start from data, we are able to find facts through data mining. And then by using process mining, we are able to find causal relationships from data. So the idea here is, let's consider process mining in order to build causal relationships from data by recurring to the analysis of log files. Of course, this is not sufficient because, as I said, there is something which is escaping. And that's where systems thinking, system dynamics, and other modeling approaches come to our help. Okay, I'm not going to deal on what is systems thinking and system dynamics, of course, in this concept, but it is important to say that if we just use data, we incur into certain bias. If we just use, on the other side, modeling without hanging them to data is, of course, wrong as well, because we don't hang to important information coming from data that could help us to refine the model itself. So the smart model-based governance framework that we are proposing is somehow considering a sort of improvement cycle coming from defining causal loop diagrams from data, and of course from the analysis of the organization itself, not only through what is already known and prescribed somewhere, described or defined, but also through the implicit knowledge that is present in the people inside the organization. So in other words, the idea is that organizational models can be improved and ultimately transformed into data smart models that are, of course, fit for decision making in governance. Just in order to provide you with a quick and final understanding of what I'm talking about, the idea is that, let me go to this couple of final slides. The idea is to not only use some models that are also well known, like the model, the ambidexterity or smart organizational structure that also Marcus Schreininger talks about, but to take this triad of variables like governance, structure, and innovation, and bring it to a sort of next level by considering that systems thinking is capable of by basically working on the organization's knowledge, that is basically the data, to let's say bring this flat dimension to a more 3D dimension by let's say exploiting the data and the information that is built inside the organization. So, as I said, this is just some food for thought, for debate in how decision-making, decision support systems should evolve. They are probably already evolving into this direction, but there is in the literature not so much of this yet, and that's why we are actively and strongly proposing the use of modeling and simulation, in particular through systems thinking and system dynamics, in order to enhance not only IT-based DSS, but also organizational models by, let's say, compenetrating each other in order to build the next future decision support systems. Of course, I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Armenia. I think this is a very interesting, and I think it's we all probably have something to say about it. So I would like to invite anybody to ask a question. You can raise your hand or type it in the chat, whatever is easier. What I especially like about what you're showing us here is that, it's systematics and data. It's not systematics or data. It's actually those two can work together. But let me not ask that question. Nalini, I would like to ask you to take the stage and ask your question.
Yes, our stage. Thanks, Stefano, and thank you for accepting the invite to present and support our conference. Firstly, so in terms of the smart model-based framework, do you think that, well, the way I see it, I expect there would be challenges in terms of having your executive level actually understand and take the time to understand the setup of these smart data-driven models. How do you think a problem like that can be resolved? Because you get that, I think I would call them like the one button executive that wants you just to press the button and get an answer out. And it's more like the system dynamicist that works through this, that gets that understanding, but then there's that disconnect between what you now know and the guy that actually needs to make the call in terms of the executive decision. So how do you think that could be approached in terms of trying to get them to sit down and actually understand the way in which these models should be constructed, or the framework?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. Well, first of all, there is no silver bullet. We know that. So, you know, we have come to know that in order to solve complex problems, we really need to go for multi-solving, no? So the idea here is not to try to push for, let's say, something where you just press the button and you get the right answer. No. Even because, again, there is no right answer if you don't have the right questions. And in order to pose the right questions, most of the times you have to have a clear understanding of not only what is the data that your organization is producing, but also how your organization is effectively working. And you can only know about this if you can try to, let me go to this slide, which is, I think it's relevant. If you can try to match what comes out from what the systems tell you, that the IT systems tell you, and also from what the people is telling you, because you might have a process described in a way in some document where, you know, it has been sculpted in stone and written in stone, but then people are implementing that process in a completely different way, sometimes even jumping some passages and not doing them on the IT systems. So there are a lot of situations, especially in banking environment, where there are a lot of people that take the data out of the IT systems, put them into an Excel file, make their own calculation, who knows how, and then put back the result into the IT systems, which, you know, is potentially devastating because it's it could introduce very huge biases. On the other hand, you know, there are also some assumptions that are done and that are, let's say, part of the social bias of an organization. So for sure, it's of course difficult to produce ultimately something where you press the button and you get the right answer, but for sure it's something that we should maybe try to head for, in the sense that at the moment there are companies that are selling these black box push the button solutions, but only based on data and not on models. On the other hand, there are companies that are selling these solutions only based on models. Okay, with some data, but when there has been not this, let's say, compenetration of approaches. Again, I think this is a context and a field which is really open for future evolutions, and it might, of course, also here I see a big perspective for systems thinking, because a clear understanding of how the organization is working by, you know, putting down the wrong, or well, let's say some mental models inside an organization could also become a key aspect in order to understand how the organization is effectively working, and then matching this mental model, you know, of the governance with the mental model, let's say, or the causal structure coming out of process mining could be interesting, no, to see, because you could realize that there is a bias in data or a bias in the persons somehow. And this leads us to this, just
Professor,
to conclude,
I'm sorry
which
to
is very
have
important.
to ask you that we have kind of reached the end. The next presenter is already waiting for us. So I would love to have this discussion going further. And I really want, because there's so much of depth, especially with that last slide you showed. That's maybe the gap. That's where we should be going as dynamics as well. So thank you so much for bringing this to the table. I unfortunately have to call it here, but we really appreciate you, and I want everybody just to give you a hand of applause, because this is really, I think you're speaking about the future of system dynamics and where we should play a part in. So thank you so much for bringing this message to us, and we hope to work together with you going forward as well. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.